Alrighty. And of course, there we go. There we go. Let's get things out of the way. All right. A little bit early on all the things. Just to make sure things are working. Oh. Charging cable, making sure I'm not dipping everything in water. Okay, there we go. I'm gonna have to do some more fiddly bits down the road to make sure things actually work properly. Okay. Let's get a couple things out of the way here first so that I can do a little bit more die cutting to get things ready to actually swatch them. So I have my little baby die cut machine and this Waffle flower color combos tag dies, which is actually slightly too big for this machine. It's just slightly too long, but that's okay. If we put it in like so, kind of hard to do on camera. There we go. So then we run it through once and let it fly off. It obviously will not cut where it hung over the edges of the plates. So then you just shift it up to run it through the second time. Just like so. So I'll then have a nice size little tag. And the point with these is you can use like die cuts and create like color combos because it's embossed in the squares. I'm not using it for that. I just want long tags. So honestly, I think I'll just do a couple more with my regular die cut machine instead of fiddling with my baby machine on camera. I had hoped to have all these die cut ahead of time, but am I prepared? No. No, I am not. So let's do a normal size machine with normal size plates to make life a little bit easier, just so I can knock out a few of these. I'm not planning on being here all day. This isn't going to be a super long video. I just wanted to kind of show the process since people were asking about it. So I'll show the basics, you know, answer any questions if anyone wants to participate. And then everything else is linked directly below the video. So that'll just make it easier for everyone. And then when I get asked about how I made the swatches, etc., I can just direct people to the video. And then, yeah. So technically starting this a little earlier than I posted I would, but that was to get me able to set up to make sure things work, because doing live videos is something else. So yeah, heavyweight cardstock as well I'm using for these like tag bases. You don't want to use anything too flimsy, as it will create problems down the road. If the cardstock is really flimsy, like, you know, things can just start falling apart, etc. So whatever I'm using to hold swatches, I like to use something that's got a decent weight to it. So I highly prefer Simon's 120-pound white cardstock. I'll make sure this is actually lined up on here because it's not. Also, whenever you have straight edges on a wafer die, it helps to run it through at an angle. So, just like so. So I've got 2 more of these. Get these deck it, and then we'll get to the actual swatching, aka the fun stuff. Alrighty. That one and one more. There we go. Okay. Get that actually lined up. All right, that's done. Let's get this dude out of the way. All right. And then we can get to the actual product labeling. Just make sure I have all of the same set. Okay, so Lindy's magical powders, there are tons. There are many. They come in sets of 5, and they come in like a tube. I got rid of the tubes, like I recycled those because I wasn't going to keep them stored that way. You can though, you know, and have them all just stacked up like that in their tubes. I don't like that. So took them out of the tubes. I printed off labels. I just used I have a Dymo label printer, but I'll link to like the Brother PT Touch label printer below. A lot of people use that. This is more for me because I do this as a job so that I know which set these are from, because once you've taken them out of the tube, it doesn't say on the label what set they're from. So I put, like, you know, Lindy Snap Game, I put the set. So this is the Industrial Chic set. And then I put like the product number. This just helps me when I'm going to do my links, etc. And I share that, you know, so then I can just type it in, find the set, link to it. So then they've got the colors sort of on the labels. However, it doesn't matter with this brand, any brand. Printed labels are never the same as the product. Inks, sprays, shimmer powders, whatever, it's never the same, never looks the same. So got the powder, got the container, but the biggest thing is swatches. So for these, all I did was take a little bit of watercolor paper, and I'm using Canson XL watercolor paper because this is what I work on 99% of the time. Again, when it comes to swatches, do your swatches on the cardstock or watercolor paper or whatever it is that you plan to use it on. You know, if you're doing Copic marker swatches, do it on the type of paper like Nina Desert or Nina Classic Crest Color White, you know, 80 pound, 110 pound, whatever, or Copic Express, etc. If you're doing your watercolor swatches, do them on the paper you're going to use, the good stuff. Don't do your swatches on, you know, cheap cardstock you found, cheap paper, whatever, it will look different and then defeats the purpose of the swatching. Because again, cardstock, watercolor, that all that can affect how an ink looks on it, how it dries on it, how it sits on it, etc. Canson though is pretty cheap and I like it. It's held up great for me. I really like it, so I use it for everything. So that's what I'm using for my swatches. So to do simple little ones like this, all I did was take a 1-inch circle punch and I punched a ton of little circles. I punched them all out, and then I took each shimmer powder. I have a couple of containers of water, one to wash my brushes and then one of just clean water, and then just a little brush, nothing fancy. So just a little brush, and all I would do is have the powder. I'd get my brush wet with just clean water. I quickly added a blob of the water to the circle. Doesn't need to be fancy. And then I picked up a little bit of that shimmer powder and painted it. And that's literally it. Like, I made sure to like kind of work the powder in so that it's all activated. It's all, there's not like little chunks sitting anywhere. It doesn't have to be fancy. I didn't worry about making it perfect. I just wanted the color sitting on here. And depending on how much I applied, I would sometimes apply a little bit more. And then you leave it to dry. Simple. Super, super simple. Dry off my brush. Hello, Linda. So I would let that dry. Didn't take very long. Always make sure to put the lid on because I mentioned this in another video. I managed to knock one of these over. Not fun. Oh, lock that. So once this was dry, it's a matter of just adhering it to the bottom of the container. I didn't want to adhere it to the top because I've got, you know, the label and everything. You could though, if that's what you want to do. Slap it right on top. Whatever, again, whatever floats your boat. But the only thing with these is, and I can't, oh no, maybe I can peel this off. Here we go. Okay, so the bottom of these containers has a weird little notch, like it bumps out. Not a big deal. I assume like in the manufacturing process, this is probably to hold the containers like through the assembly belt, you know what I mean? So the easiest way to adhere these is just to use an adhesive square. I had these are old, the ones I've got. I'll link to, you know, but just a thicker, like standard size, you know, adhesive square. So these are like the 1/8 of an inch. You can use a little one, a bigger one, pop that in there. And then I just popped this into place. So then that way, and I'm going to keep all of these jars, I keep them stored just in a drawer upside down. So then when I'm looking, I can see the colors immediately, how they actually look on watercolor paper. So it's like, ooh, I want this color, or I want this color. And I just kept repeating the process till I had them all. The 1-inch circle fits perfectly. Again, got a link below to that. Fit perfectly inside there. And then I've got all of these swatched on the containers. I did all this die cutting. I'll show that in a second, what my plan is for that. So that for me was the easiest way to have accurate colors, because for a lot of them, like this one, this is the Time Travel Teal, like absolutely gorgeous. It has like this like gold reflex shimmer in it. It's pretty, but like when you open the container, it looks nothing like that. So of all products, shimmer powders especially, it is worth taking the time to swatch them because they look nothing. They look absolutely nothing. Like some of them are fairly similar, but a lot of them look absolutely nothing. You get that wet and it becomes, in fact, here I'll show, because that's kind of the magic of it all. So I've got an extra one now of that, which is fine. But let's get a little spot here. So this kind of like almost gray looking powder becomes that. Hence the name, magical, you know? You gotta love it. It's so pretty. So that is why you need to swatch things, because it looks completely different. I love Lindy's, but the containers are a bit of pain. I tried to put them in shakers, but it didn't work. I was thinking of getting some eyedropper squeeze bottles to transfer them to. I'm just trying to think. Possibly, but if you put them in any sort of like squeeze bottle, you definitely don't want to squeeze them, because like the Nouveau shimmer powders are in like a squeeze bottle. And I've shown that in many videos, like tap it if you do transfer, because if you squeeze, you just get, like, you don't need much. Like I barely picked up, you know, the tiniest bit of powder and it will just go, you know. Another idea people have been giving me, this little insert here. Let me see if I can get this out. This is what the container was sealed with. Like when you first get these, they're sealed. Like you'll take the lid off, and most of the time this will stay sealed to the container. I've had people tell me that they've been poking holes in these, like instead of peeling it up, they just poke holes, you know, a few holes, and they use that as kind of a shaker. I'm liking the idea. Obviously I've already like taken all mine off. However, I could potentially like re-glue these, maybe with some glossy accents, reseal, poke holes, and see. I'm going to test this out later. I'm not going to do this in this video. So that is an option. I was also thinking something like a bit of press and seal, you know, and then I could just reseal the jars and poke a few holes in the press and seal and see if I can get it to like shake out. But yeah, and then yes, other people have been transferring them to different containers. I've heard, but I haven't looked into it. I have heard that apparently Lindy's Stamp Gang, like the manufacturer of these products, has come out with, I'm not sure if they're available separately, but it was like shaker lids. You know, like those little plastic, like you think like spice jars, you know, have those little plastic opaque lids with the little shaker holes. Apparently. So I don't know if that'll be like a separate purchase, or if we even can, to like stick on these jars that'll have the shakers, because that I would be totally open to that idea. But so far I'm finding it works to just take my little fan brush, and I'm just trying to be like, I barely, like, it doesn't pick up much powder, and that's lots. Like, you don't need much at all. So you gotta figure out what kind of works for you. But those are some of the ideas people have been posting on recent videos. So we'll see. We'll see. But what I wanted to do, so I've already explained how I do the swatches for the actual little containers. And then what I wanted to do was create some swatch bookmarks for each set, because thankfully I have this stamp set. This is a waffle flower set. I think at the moment it is sold out, but it'll get restocked. Waffle flower has a bunch, and I do have links below the video to the waffle flower like swatch products, because there are a bunch of stamp sets and wafer dies, all different sorts of things to create swatches for your products. There's a lot. So this is one of my go-to ones. This is just the color swatches for watercolors, and it's specifically this one stamp I love, and it's just perfect because it's 5. Each set of Lindy's comes in a set of 5, so it's like, it's perfect. This also fits on here. There's a coordinating wafer die set for this. So there's this die that will die cut all of these, which is what I'm planning on using. There's also like wafer dies to die cut all of these individual ones if you're doing like, you know, watercolor swatches, or you could do these as well, whatever floats your boat. But yeah, there's all different sorts of wafer dies for this, and then there's one more wafer die which is hiding, which, knowing me, I probably misplaced in the process of getting all this. Oh no, there it is. It was hiding. There's also this wafer die. Let me get all these out of the way because I'm not using any of these ones for this video. So there's also this one that will die cut. So if you could, heck, you could skip getting a circle punch. If you got this die set, you could just die cut this. It's slightly, I think it's slightly smaller than an inch, isn't it? It's about an inch, maybe like just a hair smaller. Yeah, it's just a hair smaller than a 1-inch circle punch, but you could run this through and just die cut a bunch of pieces of cardstock at a time, and that would fit inside here too. So there's an option. So anyway, I don't think I'm planning on using this one though. I just want this one and this one stamp, because what I want to do is have, let me get all this out of the way, is have these tags separately that I can flip through. I'm going to put them on a ring, and then I can flip through, and I'll have all of my swatches on these tags to glance through, because I'm generally usually like, it's like, I want a purple, I want a blue, I want a brown. So then I can just flip through, figure out which one, you know, it'll be, I want this color, and it's on here. So that's my plan. So I've cut the tags with the Waffle Flower Combos tag dies, which, again, all the links are below. And then I have, like I said, my Canson watercolor paper. And we're going to move him sort of out of the way here. This is hard to do in a live video. I need, like, although this is me on a regular basis, I need more space. So, where's that wafer die? I'm thinking, yeah. So if I kind of figure it out, this is, could I get it just under 6 inches? I wonder. If I could get this to fit under 6 inches, this would actually be perfect, because this paper is 9 by 12. So let's just see. If I line it up at the 6-inch mark, ooh, just barely. I'm okay with that. It doesn't need to be perfect. This will just give me more, you know, to go on, and I can get more swatches out of one sheet of paper. So then if we go like that, and then I'll just kind of keep them all roughly the same size. So this way, and if I keep, might not be able to get the last one, but we'll see. We'll see. I'll save that one. So 5, so I can get roughly about 10 to 12 out of one 9 by 12 sheet of watercolor paper, which definitely works. Depends on how many you have. Definitely depends. 2. I'm just mostly sort of eyeballing it. So yeah, and keep the little narrower pieces. But I've got a bunch of strips now of watercolor paper. And I'll just use my bigger MISTI, because whatever. I got my MISTI. I've got my watercolor paper. And then I have my stamp, which, if I line up Stamp in the watercolor paper on the edge. And then just kind of center this stamp. Just like so. Yep. Perfect. There we go. So then, what I want to do, and I need to get more stuff out of the way. Get my heat tool plugged in. Get my embossing powder. My little dude. Ink pad would help. Alright. So, I can do several of these. Use my anti-static powder tool just to prevent the embossing powder from getting everywhere. Because we don't want that. It's just no fun. Do a few of those. And then all I gotta do is start stamping the swatch onto the watercolor paper. And I'll have to do it a couple times. Much better. I'm not looking for perfection because again, these are swatches. This isn't like a finished card. And I'm embossing only half of these and I'll explain why in a minute. So stamp them in black and I used VersaFine Clair Nocturne. And then I'll just emboss them with clear embossing powder because I am not going to mess around with black embossing powder, like ever. Too much of a mess. So I can do several of these before I need to melt them. Stamp the second time. Make sure it's just stuck in the corner there. Perfect. And then okay, 2 is enough for now. I'll still stamp. I'll stamp 2 without embossing. I'll heat emboss those in a second, but I'll stamp 2 more that I'm not going to emboss. You could emboss all of them. It's, you know, whatever floats your boat, but again, there's a method to my madness. Okay. So that will be a non-heat embossed one. And let's take this one. And we'll do one more. Okay. This one was too short. Great job, Amy. Obviously, I wasn't paying attention when I cut some of these. Oy. My measurements were off. Wonderful. Well, I'll figure that out later. There we go. Stick that. There we go. Okay. Got some stamped. Let's get that out of the way. These 2 are heat embossed, or they have embossing powder on them. So let's quickly melt these. Okay, now for the fun part. These are heat embossed. I wasn't planning on using a hardboard, but this actually might make things a tad, in fact it will make things a tad bit easier. It could be heat embossed, a hardboard, really strong chipboard, whatever. But by having this, I can then take a little bit of painter's tape to hold this down so that it doesn't curl up when I start spraying water all over it. So got my 5 circles. They're heat embossed, so it's got a little bit of a raised edge, so it'll keep things a bit more contained. And then I have my 5 colors, like so. So what I want to do is take these colors, and I'll use my little fan brush and stick a bit of each color into the center of each of these circles. And the reason I wanted to do this way specifically, yeah, see this one like still kind of wants to stick, is because the swatches I have here I painted, and with magical powders specifically, because some of them are a mix, it won't show up as much probably with any of these ones, but a lot of shimmer powders are actually a mix of different pigments. So you know, when you sprinkle them and spray them, you'll see like other colors pop out. So there's a difference between throwing down powder and spraying versus picking up with a brush and painting with it, if that makes sense. So I wanted to have swatches that kind of show how these look kind of in their natural state. You know what I mean? Because more often than not, that's how I use them, is, you know, sprinkling the powder, spraying with water, etc. Yes, the watercolor swatches are out of stock right now. Sorry. I only found that out like when I was doing all my links, and I'm like, of course, of all the swatching sets, the ones I'm planning on using are out of stock. They will restock them hopefully as soon as possible. That's a lot. But yeah, this video will stay up, and I will probably just update my social media when I get a notification when they come back in stock. Set a little bit more. Probably don't need near that much, but I can't help it. I can't help it. There we go. Ooh. Okay, let's add I'm trying to be more careful. Especially when doing swatches, doing multiple colors, and I'm working with these powders. I'm trying not to mix, you know, I want to keep them as true to the container as possible to make my life a little bit easier. This helps with my procrastinating. Yeah, I know, right? I've been putting this off. I started collecting these powders months and months ago. I forget when Simon started carrying them. Like, I've had Lindt products before. It was their spray like years, like eons ago, like a decade ago. I don't even remember how long. It's forever ago anyway. But yeah, Simon started carrying the magical powders, and I was like, oh, I must own every single one. Okay, the other thing I want to do, let's protect my work surface. Very carefully lift this out of the way before I knock all those powders off. That's kind of protecting because I'm going to use a lot of water, and I would rather not get everything soaking wet. So my trusty little flour sackcloth, there we go. And then when spraying these, whether they're on this or a background or anything, hopefully I can keep I start very high up, and I use my Nouveau spray bottle because this one does like just a really nice mist. And I try to keep it high up because you don't want like big blobs of water just hitting it, because it will literally knock the powders like everywhere. So I start really high up and I start to spray. And then once they start activating, I can get kind of closer. And it's like magic. See? Super fun. Super, super, super fun. Love it. And then all I want to do is sort of activate that a little bit. I don't want to muck with it too much because I want it to remain true. But I also want to make sure the powders are like activated and not just sitting there. But you can see what I mean by there being other colors present in these, and some are more obvious than others. Some are a massive mix of colors that look very interesting, like compared to the actual, like that is that is that one, this one, this one. So that's spraying the powders, that's painting with them, and how completely different they can look. This one's about the closest, and as it dries, it will look different than it looks now. But this is what I was talking about, how they can look very, very different depending on how you're using them, you know? So, and like this one's got quite a mix. Like there's some orangey colors in here. There's kind of a gray blue color because that's what all makes that color. So it's just interesting. And then keeping my brush clean in between. So that's the heat embossed with them sprayed. That's why I wanted them heat embossed, because you can see like it's literally keeping things contained. Otherwise these would have just gone like bleh, and all mixed together, which would have been fine, but defeats the purpose of swatching. So then the other thing I wanted to do is I have the ones I just stamped. I didn't bother heat embossing these. I'll still tape it down just to keep everything together. Like hair stuck to everything. Literally. So I'll tape this as well. And then in the same order as what I've already done all these, I'm going to do a painted swatch. I already have painted swatches, you know, on the bottoms, but I thought while I'm doing all this, might as well do a second one because I'm going to adhere them on either side of the tags. So one side will have the spray swatches, the back will have the painted swatch, because again, they do look different. So for me, the redundancy is worth it because I want to be able to see things at a glance, and because that's how, you know, things work for me. So for that, I'm going to move my little water cups to my right hand side so that I can do this. So then all I'm going to do, actually I'll use a larger brush for this because that'll be faster. All I'm going to do is add just water to each one of these. Just like so. And then pick up just the smallest amount of powder. And that's what you end up with. Again, you don't need much. Water right there so I can pick that up. So now I can see how this will look if I want to paint with these, or if I want to spray them. So clean my brush between each color because again, ooh, that one picked up a lot. I don't want to contaminate the colors because I want to keep them as is. That's basically how they come out of the jar. This one is super pretty. There's so much like sparkle in this. It's amazing. I loves it. And then yeah, this is another one that has like so many different colors. Like there's like a yellow, there's a blue, like to create that shade of green. There's many different colors in here. So this is one of those ones where painting versus spraying can be completely different looks. Just like so. I'm still filming, go away. So yeah, and they all vary. Some shimmer powders are very sort of true to color, like they're just one color with some additional, you know, shimmer. And then many of them are combos of shimmer and different colors, and certain colors react more than others. Like that's why I love shimmer powders, and I've done so many videos on them because they're also, you know, it's kind of like my whole, you know, you can never have too many snowflakes. That's kind of the same idea. You can never have too many shimmer powders because they're all unique. And they all look very, very different. And they're just fun. And yeah, this one also has, like I said, multiple colors in there that create this color. A little bit more. There we go. And then of course it also depends too on how much powder you add, how much water. It just varies a lot. Okay. Okay. Now let's put these lids on before I like sneeze over this container. That would be the absolute worst. So then when I'm doing things in multiples, with this I know, like just by looking at them, like what color is what. But I always try to keep everything kind of in order so that when it comes to actually labeling them when I'm done, which that'll be kind of my last step here. I'm going to dry these, I'll die cut them, and then show how I label the tags, and then we'll call that a day, because yeah. So I've always said to a lot of times to just like when it's an actual background, especially like when you start to walk away, because using a heat tool can like move, you know, just the airflow from the heat tool can move things around and change it, which can also be fine. Again, depends on what you're doing. But I'm just, again, we're just doing swatches. This isn't rocket science. And otherwise, like these are going to take a long time to dry. Like there's obviously a lot of water. It's a good thing I taped it because this would have curled up and then everything would have run off the sides. Actually, I was using a lower setting on this, but another thing, if a person has it, let me get this out of the way without knocking everything over. This is why I keep my Tim Holtz like Ranger Heat It craft tool. This is great to have for specifically drying watercolor, etc. I don't like heat embossing with this. The heat gets up to temperature, but this disperses airflow. It's not directed like a embossing tool. So I don't like heat embossing with this. It takes too long. I don't have the time for that crap. However, this is nice for drying things and it's quieter. So because it just disperses, it makes things dry nicer, and you can see it's not pushing as much. Like really, the only time you really have like movement is because you're moving the actual tool, not from the airflow. So that's why I like keeping this guy around, is specifically to dry things faster without blasting it with a heat tool. And also lifting your hardboard, or if it's just a panel, whatever it is, off of your surface and not leaving it, like even if it's a heat resistant surface, like a craft mat, glass mat, whatever, it helps to raise it up so that there's airflow underneath. You will dry things faster, and that's just physics. So yeah, raising it up, letting the airflow move, and then trying not to move around, specifically this side because this is the side I sprayed. But again, it's amazing how different it'll look from when it's wet to when it's dry. And you want to make sure it is completely dry before removing it, going to the next step, etc. Because the last thing you want is making a huge mess. Alrighty. See how like completely different, like sprayed, painted, completely different. It's so bizarre. I love it. I love it. Okay. let's get everything out of the way again. So basically I will repeat this process over and over again. I'm not going to do that on a live video. We'd be here all day. And this is something I'll just kind of work on in between other things. Because each one is a little bit time consuming. Let's put that over there. So once these are done, and most of these I'll save the tape for the next round. And I'll just keep reusing the tape while I do all these swatches. So I've got my little swatches. I knocked over my wafer die onto the floor. Actually, I can probably reuse some of this tape for the die cutting as well. Let's just grab that. I think, ooh, and I knocked my little tripod. Let's do this one first. Oh yeah, this will fit on here. So I'll just use my little die cut machine for this. And I'll line up the coordinating wafer die. Just like so. Tape it into place so that it stays. And then I'll run this through my little die cut machine. So I've got my little swatches. And then depending on what you're doing, whether it's a background, anything, a lot of times I'll notice, like, I'm expecting it with this because there's a few little spots with the pigment powders. The pressure of the machine, a lot of times it'll transfer onto the cutting plate. Not the end of the world. It just sucks when you don't notice, and then you go to like die cut something from white cardstock and there's, you know, splotches all over it all of a sudden. So when I'm doing things like this, a lot of times I will wipe the plates afterwards with just a bit of like alcohol, hand sanitizer, that sort of thing, just to clean off, you know, whatever colored bits of anything that decided to transfer. So we will die cut this one. Huh, good. Okay. One last thing for me not to worry about. That off of there. Fold that up. So now I've got swatches. I have my tag. And then all I'm going to do, you could print off. Where's my little... This is what I want. My little Sharpie. You could print off labels, same as these, and put them on the top. That works too. I'm not going to bother because I didn't plan ahead and I just don't really care. So what I'm going to do is just put along the top. These are industrial chic. Yeah, I'm not going to bother with the actual anything. And then I think for adhesion, let's just keep it simple. You could use liquid adhesive or you could use anything. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to use score tape. If I just do a run of score tape right down that, peel off the backing, just like so, and then I'll take each of the colors and I will label them. And I do not like my own handwriting at all, but for swatches, I don't care. So then I'll do the same thing on the back. I'm probably not gonna bother labeling them because I put them in the same order, so I just know when I flip it over, it's like, okay, like this is how they look. Painted versus sprayed. There we go. A bit off of there. Shimmer everywhere. And that's it. So that's how I swatch all of these. So I will eventually have a little ring with several sets on here that I can then flip through, see all the colors. Like I said at the beginning, I keep all of these just in a drawer, stored upside down, so that I can see the colors at a glance. I've got the sides labeled, that I explained in the beginning as well. And then every time I go to use these, because I keep them stored upside down, it's just habit to tap them a little bit, just so that I don't open the container and it's all like just goes bleh. Because, yeah. So, thanks to the couple of you actually watching this live. This was a last minute thing because I just thought I was going to do it anyway, might as well. But I will add this live to my shimmer powder playlist because that one's got, you know, all the videos I've done making cards using shimmer powders. And I'll keep doing more, you know, with all of these. And yeah, I have links below this video to everything I used. There's a couple I need to edit and add. I'll add like the score tape and anything else I might have missed. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see y'all very soon in an actual card making video.